Sonos has finally released a new subwoofer for their new line of products, and this is the Sonos Sub Gen3, replacing the Sonos Sub Gen2 that was released back in 2012. Let's jump into things. Hi, my name is Jonah. Today we're going over the Sonos Sub Gen3, the newest Sonos Sub in their line of products. Now, just like all of Sonos's packaging, this thing comes in very nice packaging. It looks very luxury, as one would say, similar to Apple and how they package their products. It's available in both a black and a white glossy finish, and basically this thing is like a fingerprint magnet. Like, I set it down just to test it a little bit, brought it up here on my desk so we could take a look at it, but there's literally there's fingerprints all over it from where I touched it earlier. There's lint and hair and stuff all over it already, and I've had it for maybe a week now. So just be aware that it is a fingerprint magnet and stuff just kind of sticks to it. They do give you a microfiber cloth though, so that is kind of a plus, so you can easily wipe some of that stuff off. Sonos prides themselves on being very simple, and just like their Sonos Arc, where it literally has a power connection, HDMI, eARC, and network, this thing's super similar too. It's literally just power and an Ethernet cable in case you want to wire it to your network instead of doing Wi-Fi. So that's the nice thing about this. Fully wireless, you don't have to plug it in if you don't want to. And from my experience, I haven't had any issues using it over Wi-Fi. Its dimensions are 15.3 inches high, 15.8 inches wide, and 6.2 inches deep. Weighing in at an astounding 36.3 pounds, this thing is an absolute monster. It is fairly heavy for most wireless subwoofers that are out there. Now, Sonos has made their subwoofer very unique compared to all other subwoofers on the market. Now, the first thing that makes it pretty unique is the fact that it's completely wireless. You know, a lot of subwoofers are wireless, and a lot of manufacturers do have that option, Bose specifically. What's also really unique about this thing is the force canceling drivers. So if you look at the subwoofer, the drivers are actually facing each other, and it basically makes the shape of an O. So if you see, I can literally fit my hand through the center of the subwoofer. It's not a full solid block. So those force canceling drivers, when you're playing audio, they're moving in simultaneous directions. So if one is pushing out, the other pushes that way. So it's moving like this, effectively canceling most of the vibrations that you would feel from a traditional subwoofer. So if you have a normal sub that's down firing or even just out firing, that thing typically vibrates a whole lot. Well, with this system, relatively no vibrations at all. And it's crazy because it still pushes a tremendous amount of air. If you put your hand to it while it's playing, you can definitely feel the air moving around, but it's not actually vibrating the ground. It's vibrating the air, and as the sound signals and sound waves are moving through the air, you can feel those. So it does also have two ports on it. So if you look at the very top and the very bottom, there are ports right there for air to move. And what's cool is if you actually look through it, or you have like a scope that can bend around and look through it all, those ports actually go all the way around to the back of where the speaker drivers are. So that's a pretty, like I said, unique design. No one else has done this from what I can tell, and I'm sure Sonos probably has some pretty good patents on this as well. The port on the subwoofer allows for a better bass response, so it actually allows the air to move rather than it being stagnant or trapped inside. So the port does increase the bass response, and it makes it sound a little bit better. Allows the air to basically move a little bit more efficiently than it would without it. Now, something to keep in mind about the Sonos Sub is that it is a slave device, and by slave device we mean it is ran off of another speaker. So for instance, in my living room I have the Sonos Arc, so the subwoofer connects to the Sonos Arc, and that's where it receives all of its audio signals. It can also be connected to the Sonos Beam, Sonos Play Bar, Sonos Play Bass, a bunch of their normal speakers as well to make like a 2.1 system. You could do like Sonos 1, Sonos 1 SLs, Sonos 5, like all of the above. The only stipulation on this is that whatever device you're going to use, so the Sonos 1, 1SL, 5, whatever, it has to be Sonos S2 compatible. Now, Sonos S2 is both the app and the operating system that powers all of the new generation Sonos products. There's actually very few devices that aren't Sonos S2 compatible. I'll go ahead and list those on the screen for you just so it's easy for you to see, but it's like 4 or 5 of them that don't actually support Sonos S2. Now I do want to take a second to compare it to the old Generation 2 Sonos Sub. Now if you've seen the Generation 2 Sonos Sub, you know that this one doesn't look all that different from it. They're very similar in looks. Actually, there's no cosmetic differences except for this button right here. That's the only cosmetic difference that you can clearly tell. Most of the changes come in the electronics that are actually contained within the Sonos Sub. So of course, they have an updated processor. I think it's up to a quad core at 1.5 gigahertz now. They doubled the RAM from the Gen 2 to the Gen 3. So the Gen 2 had 128 megabytes and this one has 256 megabytes. They improved the wireless receiver on this unit. So if you didn't have the best Wi-Fi connection before, this one should be a little better at receiving that connection. If you had a good wireless connection before, it's really not going to make much of a difference for you. We already mentioned that the join/connect button is changed. The old one was squarish, kind of like how it was on the Sonos Play Bar. This one's more circular and has a much more clean finish to it, I think. Something that not a lot of people are mentioning in their reviews is that the drivers in this unit are actually different from the drivers in the Gen 2 unit. So there's much more space between the two drivers in the Gen 3 than there was in the Gen 2. This little space right here is what I'm talking about. So the space between this one, the space between here on the Gen 3 sub is more than it was in the Gen 2 sub. And that means that these new drivers can move more than the old drivers. And usually when a driver can move further, it means that it can produce a little bit better quality sound and it can move more air. And with subwoofers, moving more air means better bass response. It's gonna sound deeper, it's gonna sound more powerful. So that's kind of what we want. And with these changes in the drivers, the Sonos Gen 3 sub actually has a better bass response than the Sonos Gen 2 sub. So that is something that not many other people are mentioning, but basically below 48 hertz, this subwoofer has a better bass response. Now, I'm not going to take credit for this finding because I did a ton of research prior to making this video, and it was a YouTuber by the name of, I wrote it down, Peter P. So he did a really extensive review on the Sonos Gen 3 sub, comparing it to the Sonos Gen 2 sub because he actually has both units. And he did a lot of research. He did a frequency test on everything using a sound pressure level meter. So he was able to actually test and see that, okay, the Gen 3 sub does have a better bass response than the Gen 2 sub. So if you want to check out his video, I'll link to that in the description. He's a very good YouTuber. I've really enjoyed watching some of his videos, so check him out if you're interested. So now that we've gone over all the different specs, we've compared it to the Gen 2 Sonos sub, I want to go over some of my opinions and what I think of this subwoofer. And I honestly think that this subwoofer is just absolutely amazing. I have the Sonos Arc, so when I connected it to my Sonos Arc, and it completely changes everything. Sonos Arc, I was not impressed with the bass response at all. They did do a firmware update that kind of fixed it. They fixed some of the distortion issues that it had when you're playing it at really loud volumes, but adding this thing completely changed it. Like, I can hear super thumpy bass and that sounds awesome, and it even increases the quality of the mid-range and the high range in the Sonos Arc, because now the Sonos Arc is no longer trying to play those the very low-end frequencies anymore. It's passing those on to the Sonos Sub. So that means it can send more power to the drivers playing the mid-range and the highs. So it just increases the quality altogether, and it's just very powerful. I love the fact that it doesn't vibrate the entire room, it doesn't vibrate the floor, but I can still feel it in my chest and I can feel it in the room when it's really playing. Another awesome thing is that you can lay it flat on the ground, so it doesn't have to be sitting up like this. You can actually lay it flat on the ground. So if you have a couch or something that's, more than 6.2 inches deep and you can fit it underneath, then I'd try that out. I'm not able to do that because everything I have is too low to the ground. But if you're able to, that gives people a lot more options for hiding this sub. One of the absolute best things is that you can tune it with Trueplay. And Trueplay is part of the Sonos S2 app and the Sonos S2 software, where you can essentially map out the sound environment of your room and digitally tune the subwoofer. So it also, I went over this a little bit in my Sonos Arc review about how this process worked, but it makes a big difference being able to do that. So even while adjusting the EQ settings, putting it up to the max subwoofer volume or putting it all the way down, I couldn't get any distortions to come out of this thing, no matter what volume I was playing everything at. So that right there is just really impressive. Most subwoofers can't do that at all. What's really surprised me is that I haven't experienced any popping or cutting out with this subwoofer. Now in my Nakamichi Shockwave Pro review, that one also uses a wireless sub, but I noticed that pretty commonly, once every 5 minutes or so, the subwoofer would cut out for a second or two and then come back in. So it seemed like it was just losing wireless connection over and over again. I haven't experienced anything with the Sonos Sub. I've been using this for over a week now, and not a single time have I had it disconnect while playing something or just cut out, pop, nothing like that. It's performed phenomenally. And I know I've talked about the sound quality, the performance, all of that. I am going to do a quick sound test at the end of the video, basically just showing what it sounds like with the sub on and what it sounds like with the sub off when playing from my Sonos Arc. So that's the best way I can do it. I don't have any fancy sound measuring tools or utensils or anything like that. So I just used one of my high quality microphones that I have, and I did my best to try and give you some sort of quality test that you can kind of understand what it sounds like and what it sounds like without the sub. So you can see that at the end of the video, but I do want to keep going on to the actual setup process. Now, just like setting up the Sonos Arc initially, setting up this sub is super easy. It's literally like a 5-minute process maybe, all done through the app. You basically go into your settings, you tap system, you tap add product, and it's gonna automatically start searching for your Sonos Sub. Once it finds a Sonos Sub, you're gonna press the join button on the front of it, and that's gonna signal to Sonos that this actually is your subwoofer, and it'll begin pairing it to your account. Once it's added to your account, it's going to run a firmware update really quick just to make sure everything's up to date and working properly. Then after that, it's gonna take you to the amazing Trueplay tuning process. So I will show just a quick example of what this looks like. First off, they have you sitting on your couch or wherever your main seating area is, and you're gonna basically hold your phone up to your face towards the screen or towards wherever you're watching. You'll do that process there. It takes about 30 seconds, and it's playing a series of sounds for your phone to listen to, and then it's gonna automatically tune the subwoofer and the Sonos Arc according to how those sounds are processed or how those sounds are heard by your phone. And I do need to make sure that I mention this. It is only for iOS. So Android users, I'm sorry, the Trueplay tuning doesn't work with you yet, but with iPhones, it does work. So once you do the sitting test, then it'll have you basically walk around the room with your phone, just kind of scanning up and down. It kind of looks weird, but I did notice a difference from before where I didn't do the Trueplay tuning to after where I did do the Trueplay tuning. So I think it's a good process to go through no matter what. All right, so do I think this subwoofer is worth $699? Yes, I really do. Like, this soundbar does sound really nice. It completes my system in my living room. Like the Sonos Arc, it sounded amazing. I love the mid-range, I love the highs, but the bass just, it wasn't there for me. This thing completely changes that and enhances everything I already loved about the Sonos Arc. And what's also nice is that you don't have to buy it bundled with whatever soundbar you're getting. You can always get the Sonos Arc or the Sonos Beam. You can get that first, use it for a few months, and then once you've saved up some money or you've had the holiday times go by, then you can use some of that money and go out and get the sub. You don't have to do it as one large purchase. You can always just add it in at a later time when you've had a little bit more time to save up money. So I think if you can and you're able to, definitely go out and get this thing because it sounds amazing and it's really going to complete your Sonos system. So the only thing I really wouldn't recommend this for is if you just have normal speakers. So if you just have Sonos One SLs, Sonos Ones, the new Sonos 5, like I don't know how well this is going to work with those. I haven't tried that out. I guess if you're just a really good, or if you really enjoy listening to music, you're a quote unquote audiophile, which you really wouldn't be using Sonos stuff if you're an audiophile, but regardless, if you really just love listening to music and you want some bass, then you can still connect the Sonos Sub to your Sonos One SL, Sonos 5, like you can do it to whatever. So don't worry about that. Just make sure that it is Sonos S2 compatible. If it's not, then it won't work. I mentioned that earlier in the video, so make sure you paid attention. And that really does it. At the end of the video, I will have the sound test that I did. It's about 2 or 3 minutes of a sound test, so it doesn't take too much of your time, but you can see how it sounds. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please click like. If you didn't enjoy it, you think I didn't do a good job, please click dislike. Tell me how you felt in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions for me, anything you want me to review, any questions you have, also leave that as a comment. I'm always going through those, answering questions and whatnot. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please click subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.